Welcome to the Optimus NFL show, top 10 defensive linemen for the 2025 NFL draft. I am your host, Brad Bolt, and joining me, as always, my good mate, my co-host, and the draft analyst we are now going to roll with for the Optimus fantasy website. It is Dan O'Connell. Dan, how are we?
Brad, I'm good. I've asked for a title. I've asked for a pay rise. I've got one of the two things, so we're looking good so far.
Yeah, it's the pay rise. I mean, I can send you $5. That's a pay rise because that's about where we're at the moment.
That is a pay rise. I don't ask for much. See.
So
I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, this is the stuff that we've been looking forward to, Dan and myself. This is the thing that we spend most of our weeks going back and forth, just talking about draft prospects. This is our favorite time of the year, going through all of this. So we've decided this year that we are going to do proper top 10s at each position. We're starting today with the defensive lineman. Top 10. Some of these shows are going to be top 10. Some might be end up our top 15 to 20, just based on how deep the positions are. And some will probably end up being less than that, depending on positions. But this for us is we're going to start somewhere different by going the defensive side of the ball. And both Dan and I love looking into these sorts of types of players and prospects. And I think from watching all of our film that we have on these guys, we've probably gained a new appreciation for some of these dudes as well after being able to focus in on them properly. So, Dan, I just want you to just give a bit of your thoughts on this defensive line class that we're going to go through before we start jumping into some of our top 10 guys.
It's kind of like, so this is a pretty deep class, to be honest, and we were speaking off air where we've got a top 10, but there's probably 15, 16 sort of guys where we would have liked to have got to their tape. But time restraints and just not being able to get too much on some of them just yet made it a little difficult. But it's definitely a deep class, and there's a good variety as well. Like you see some of the guys that we'll be talking about, they're your big nose tackle types. But then there's other guys that are the sort of tweeners kind of thing between defensive tackle, defensive end, who are really shifty and fast and can move in or outside as well. So it's kind of what team wants what kind of interior defensive lineman here. And it's, interesting just to look through the list and look at the size and just the different game style that they all have.
Yeah, and this is one of those things too that looking at this class this is one of the deeper defensive line classes. So like you said, we've got some guys who are going to be nose tackles, some who are going to be lining up as, say, 3-4 defensive ends. We're not going to delve into too much of that. We're not going to give our rankings on that side of thing. We're just going straight top 10 defensive linemen, where we value these guys, where we see them. Some of these shows, when you look at them, Dan and I might end up with the exact same top 10, 15, whatever it might be, just differing orders. And there are going to be some shows like our next one that we'll do after this, but we'll leave that to tell you which one that is at the end of the show. But where him and I might have a completely different opinion of how our top 10, 15 guys roll. So, this is going to be some of those ones where we're both pretty confident here we're going to have the exact same number one. It feels pretty obvious in this one. But yeah, there's going to be some shows where we are going to have completely different top 10s, and that's going to create a bit of chat amongst you guys as well. So what we'll do is we'll jump into this. Dan, can you give me a couple of the guys you mentioned? There's probably 15, 16 guys that we wanted to get to properly, but not all of them we actually did. Can you give me a couple of the guys that that didn't quite make your top 10 based on the fact that we weren't able to watch their film properly yet, or enough of their film?
Yeah, so I'll probably, from what I've watched so far, I think Jordan Phillips and Shamar Turner were kind of 11 and 12 for me. You can flip them either way, whichever way you want, but they're going to be good to watch through this whole process, and I'm looking forward to watching more tape on them as well. And then the other one who I didn't have pretty much barely any tape on, so I couldn't really look into him much, but his name's been popping up a lot the last week and a half. It's Jadari Caldwell out of Oregon. Now, this dude's an absolute monster. Well, he's like 6'3", 242 pounds, but he plays like he's 40 pounds lighter than what he is.
Yeah.
So he's going to be one that I'm going to look to dig up some more tape on and see if I can watch a lot more of him, because I got a feeling he's going to be somebody that kind of jumps up big time in this process.
Yeah, so Jamari Caldwell out of Oregon, like I haven't had enough chance to watch his tape or anything yet, but he is a guy that is starting to pop up a lot more on other people's radars who are talking about him. So he's definitely someone. Jordan Phillips as well. So I've got also on my list, I've got both the Shamars from Texas A&M. I've got Stewart and Turner. Now they're guys who are probably also going to appear maybe in our Edge Rusher show whenever we do that, but I haven't got there yet, because obviously these are two guys who may end up on the interior defensive line just with their size and their play style and things like that. So I haven't got around to watching them yet to really properly include them in this top 10 on this show. Last other guy, same sort of thing, just time constraints, didn't get to him, was Joshua Farmer out of Florida State. I've just seen little bits and pieces. It's sort of made a bit of a statement so far from what I've seen, but not quite to the extent where I have enough tape that I've been able to watch on him properly to include him in this top 10 yet. So by the time we get towards the draft and a lot closer, we will have our finalized top 10s. These are our rankings as of now, but these are subject to change by time we've had the combine and we've had all this other sort of stuff come along. Because we were talking about this the other day, that the combine is going to have a lot of measurements and, times and all those sorts of things, which may affect some of these rankings. But I feel pretty confident in my top 10. How are you feeling about yours, Dan?
I am pretty much locked in. Like I said, with those guys that we just spoke about, they could force their way in. And I think one of the guys I've got in my top 10, kind of, the more I watched of others, the more he kept sort of sliding down the list. So I wouldn't be surprised if I watch more of the other guys that we've got outside our top 10 where he could fall even further, to be honest. So, yeah, I'm pretty confident with how I've got my guys ranked for what I'm seeing them so far. So, be interesting to see how we match up.
That it will. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick this off. So, Dan, can you give me your 10 through 8 for your top 10 of defensive linemen?
Okay, so number 10, I've got Deone Walker. And then number 9, I've got Omar Norman-Lott. And then number 8, I've got Alfred Collins. So Deone Walker was the one where he just kept sliding down the list the more people I watched. I don't know what it is. There's so much there to like with him. He's got massive size, takes up a lot of space. He's got good quickness. He can be disruptive, but we don't see it enough for someone his size with his tools, like athletic tools, where he's disruptive often enough. So I think, he's got a lot that he can improve on, but there's also a lot there to like with him. So if he lands in the right situation and can develop with some good coaching there, he could be that sort of Jordan Davis type guy in the middle of a defense there eventually. I don't think he's on that level though, to be honest. I don't think he's close to that level yet.
No. So I had Deone Walker at 10 as well. Similar sort of things to you see. Like he's got really good size. He can move pretty well for his size, but there's things through like his consistency isn't quite there the way that we've seen in some of these other guys. I feel like sometimes he's too high, like his pad level's too high. So if he's playing against an offensive lineman who's got good leverage, he feels like he just he's stuffed straight away. Like he's just too high sometimes with his pad level. And I don't know about you, but I didn't see him as super explosive. I saw him, he had little bits and little spurts, but I didn't see him to be the most explosive of all the guys here. What were you thinking the same thing as me, or did you have a slightly different view of how you saw him?
No, I was pretty similar. Like you said, he shows that explosiveness, but it's not often enough. Like he doesn't do it play to play. So, and I guess being his size, it's going to be difficult for him to sort of show that explosiveness play after play after play, which I think is what's going to limit him to kind of that 2 down sort of defensive tackle. I don't think he'll have the stamina and the ability to stay on the field all 3 downs to start his career. I think that's something he needs to work towards doing to be more consistent. But he does show he has that explosiveness. He's got that quick get off at times. It's just, not often enough. So that consistency is a bit of an issue for him there.
So we both had him at 10. You had Omar Norman Lott at 9. I have him at 7. So what did you see that put him at 9?
So for me, 6'3", 319 out of Tennessee. I think he shows good power. He can show power in both the pass game and run game, which is key for him. Like he's going to be on the field at his size. He's going to be able to be on the field a lot as well. So he can make plays in both the passing game and the running game. So I think that was something I liked with him. For his size, he moves well. Like he's got that good short area quickness, but he can still move and chase down plays as they develop, which at his size, that's impressive as well. So it's just things like that that are going to keep him on the field a lot. So I liked him. Number 9 for me, I think I like others better, obviously, but you had him at 7, which is interesting. So I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought there are some things that I wasn't a fan of. Like I thought that just looking at my notes I've got here, like some of the things that I saw, he sort of I wouldn't say his pad level, but like his shoulders. Sometimes he got too square too quickly, and he was sort of moved off his gap pretty easily. So like instead of sort of going into his bull rush straight away, he would sort of, almost try to do like a pass rush move, but get turned sideways. So then the offensive lineman could just go, okay, well, you're side on now. It's just easy for me to move you out the way.
Yeah.
It didn't, and then like he didn't really have a lot of like pass rush counter moves. So it's not one of these guys who, okay, he's gone for the ball rush, that doesn't work. Let me get this counter and let's try the like. It didn't seem to have a lot of that, but I thought like he had like a really good motor. I saw like a really good motor to get a lot of those, the pass coverage sacks. Like we just saw in the Super Bowl how important it is to be able to rush the quarterback with only 4 guys. We just saw what Philadelphia did to Kansas City. He's a guy who, in the right team where they've got the right defensive backfield, who can contain that coverage. To me, I liked his ability to get those sort of like coverage type sacks, I guess you'd call them, where he just sticks at it. He goes. He doesn't really seem to stop. He's just got an ever going motor. I just think, and like, I think he has the ability to become a good pass rusher. I just think he needs to get to the right situation where they work with someone on his pass rush moves to improve it. That's sort of what I've seen, but I like overall as a player and as a prospect, I really like him. To me, this 10 through probably 7, these were some of the guys that like I've put them in here. The only one that I'm actually confident in putting in his spot that would probably stay if I didn't make any changes is probably Deone Walker. These other guys in this, 9 through 7 sort of range are interchangeable for me in a lot of different ways. So I've got him at 7, but it wouldn't surprise me if, we did this come after the combine and he could be 9 by that stage, or, you know what I mean? Like I see these guys in such a close tier in this bracket that the order, I'm not going to be upset anyway on how this order goes. So I've got him at 7, you've got him at 9. We're not too far off,
definitely
really. We
under
sort of
an
see the
umbrella
same
here
thing. Yeah, exactly. You had at 8 Alfred Collins, same as me. I had Alfred Collins at 8.
Was he?
Yeah,
Okay. I actually thought you were
I
going to
was
have him
thinking,
higher. I'm shocked. That's the
I
first
was
one
I
I'm
was
surprised
2.
about.
I was 2, but as I was looking at some of these other guys, it's not a product of me thinking that he's bad at all. Like, I sort of still think he's probably like I'd probably put like around, I think I need to find my thing. I can't find it at the moment, just in a different program. But I think I gave him about around like a late round 3 sort of grade. So, like, still second day. He's in that sort. That's where all these sort of guys are for me, roughly in that round 3, early round 4 sort of range. I've got him as probably like a third rounder. I said, good size, and he looks like he's got some long arms. I thought he had some pretty solid quickness and agility. Like, he just, he's got a good get off. I thought, like, just that first little step. That's what I saw from what I was seeing. Pretty strong. I was like, he's got a lot of power, a lot of strength. And I also like to think that, like, he, from the game, the film that I saw, and I also went and watched some of his stuff on YouTube, which was just like actual game footage of some of that we didn't have the All 22 film. He was getting his hands up and batting a lot of balls at the line of scrimmage, it felt like. Like, that's one of those things that you love seeing with your defensive linemen, is them getting their hands up and knocking those balls up into the air or knocking them down and maybe creating extra chances. So they were some of the things that I saw that I really liked. What was your sort of, you liked and you didn't like about him?
Yeah, so he's got a big time NFL frame, 6'5", 320 pounds. He's just built as an NFL lineman. And when you combine that with, he does have that sort of quick first step at times as well, where he can get not so much in the pass game, but in the running game especially. He can disrupt that pretty much straight away a lot of the time in the backfield. So I think that's where he's going to make most of his plays early on in his career, is in that run game where he's getting in the backfield and shutting down the running back behind the line of scrimmage. So I think that's going to be his biggest thing as soon as he comes into the NFL. He can get off his blocks, and I've just got here, consistently makes plays in the run game. So the issue with him is he hasn't got that pass rush sort of move set yet. He needs to develop that big time. So, yeah, the pass rush isn't going to be there for him. It's going to take some coaching there. But he's got the tools where if he can develop that pass rush, he's going to be your every down sort of defensive tackle, and he can disrupt the play in a number of ways. So, yeah, I think his ceiling could be, you look at him and he could be like a second round pick, and he's going to be that consistent sort of 8, 9, 10-year starter. But he's just got to develop that pass rush and set more.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we can have certain round grades on guys, but we know that they could potentially go a lot higher than that, based off of how the board goes, how it runs. So, we usually see, like, some teams have somewhere most years between, say, 8 and 15 first round grades only. And, then you'll see, obviously, there's 32 guys go in the first round. So that's not saying that Alfred Collins is a third round, like, will go in the third round. He could go a lot higher. He could be a second round pick, but he's a guy who I did have as that probably third round grade there. So my 10 through 8. So I had, Deone Walker, who I've mentioned. I had Darius Alexander out of Toledo at 9. And then I had Alfred Collins at 8. Whereabouts did you have Darius Alexander?
7.
7. Okay. So once again, this is that umbrella that we were talking about with these guys, that any way from 7 through 9, I wasn't going to be terribly upset with. So
you had him at 9, you were saying?
I've got him
And
at
then
9.
you had Omar
I had
Norman at
Alfred
7.
Collins. Yeah, so we've just
So
flipped
we
those
just
two.
flipped those. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So,
fair.
like, Darius Alexander, I thought, good size. Good size. I don't actually have his measurable. Do you have his measurables there? Because I don't actually have them.
So 6'4", 304 pounds, out of tiny little Toledo. So he's that small school sort of guy that you didn't hear a lot about. For us, it's hard being in Australia. We don't hear anywhere near as much as what people do in the
Yeah.
States, obviously, and who are just bombarded with college football stuff over there. So it makes it hard for us to get on these guys kind of early. So we play catch up a lot. And I'll admit that, absolutely. We
Yeah.
don't see these guys enough during the season with everything else going on, trying to keep track of everyone, to be able to go, okay, I've seen this guy the entire season. I know exactly what he is. So we get to the point
Yeah.
now where we focus on the draft, we focus on the names and players coming in. And that's when we start to play catch up a lot. And I feel like even people in the States are doing that with Darius Alexander as well. Like they're starting to see
Yeah.
him come through the process now, especially with the Senior Bowl, and go, oh, okay, here's a guy that we need to look at more.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah, he's
he had a good
absolutely that
Senior
guy.
Bowl. Yeah, had a good Senior Bowl. And the last guy out of Toledo who had a really good Senior Bowl just won in the Super Bowl, and that was Quinion Mitchell. So,
Yeah,
it's
not bad.
I'm not
Not
comparing
bad
them
to base it off.
exactly as prospects, but it's one of those things. Like Quinion Mitchell sort of did really stand out at Senior Bowl to a lot more people who didn't catch up with Toledo at that stage. So, Darius Alexander, so like I said, good size. I liked his, he had really good pad level. He was never really too high on things. Like I said, we're sort of behind some of these guys. So I reckon if we were to watch a few more games of him and watch a little bit more film, I'm probably going to have him. I would say I'd probably end up having him close to that 7 or 6 range than I do 9. It's just like you mentioned, we're on a bit of a catch up here, so you're behind on some of these guys, but it just his get off of the ball and straight into the offensive lineman was like, I was sort of like a little bit taken aback by it. I was like, oh, there you go. Just in the bits that I saw, it just sort of, it stood out. And you were like, oh, wow, this is a guy here. The problem, though, that I had with it, and probably the reason why I've got him at 9 as opposed to 7, is that there were some of these rushes where he was going for that bull rush and he sort of went, okay, just get into your move, get to your move a little bit, and then next thing you know, it was sort of like you're doing a little bit too much to get into that sort of that move. So too much time elapsed by the time he actually got into doing it. But once again, without knowing how all of Toledo went, all of the other guys, there could have been a reason that he was actually just trying to do this to make plays to actually do something to help. So it's like you said, it's a little bit hard when we are behind on some of these guys here. I'd also say he probably just needs to add a few more counter moves to his pass rush ability. I didn't see a lot of counters that you see some of these guys who are higher up on the list have. So for me, he was sort of like, I really liked him, but the things that I didn't like, and maybe the fact that yes, we are a little bit behind on these guys. He was one of my last guys to watch on this as well. So that could have had something to do with it too, but it just sort of, there was enough on the negative side of things that just made me drop him down a little bit. But if we go in and we had more time and we're able to watch a little bit more, then I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up like we were saying before, close to that 7-6 range than he was 9-10 range for me.
Yeah, so a lot of the things for me. So the weaknesses were obviously he's coming from that sort of small school competition. So, like you said, with his pass rush moves and that, is it a thing where he just didn't need to develop that as much
Yeah.
as other players did because of the competition he's against?
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be the thing that we need to see. And we saw it during the Senior Bowl a bit as well. So he will develop that, I think. but he's on the older side as well. I think he's 24, or he's going to be 24 come draft or just after the draft.
Yeah.
So he's coming
So he's
into the
that little bit older.
season as a 24. He may even be 24 now, yeah. So he's going to have the questions of, is he at his ceiling or as close to his ceiling as he can be kind of thing at the moment? Or is there still that development that he can still keep stacking up as well? So, but like you said, for his size, like 6'4", 304, he's got great speed and suddenness. So he can get off the line. He's got good strength as well to fight off the blockers in the run game. I think he's going to be someone that is kind of a third-round pick at the moment. But as you go through the combine more and he can get those sort of numbers from the testing there, I think teams are going to sort of be onto him a lot more. I shouldn't say teams because they got scouts everywhere. They'll be all over him. But as in, I think a lot of people covering the draft and that sort of thing will start seeing him as more of the second round type pick as well. So I'm looking forward to keeping an eye on him during the combine and the lead up to the draft. So he could be one of my favourite players at the moment.
Yeah, so looking at this, he was 2019, he was a red shirt, so he didn't play 2019. 2020, he played in 6 games. 2021, it was 13. 22, it was 13. 2023, it was 14. And then, yeah, he's played about the same this year. So, yeah, he is an older prospect. But, yeah, as you said, it's going to be interesting to see how he develops and how everyone sees him as the time goes on. So I'll just read through my 7 through 5, and then we can get yours and we can talk about a few guys. So at 7, I had Omar Norman-Lott. At 6, I had TJ Sanders. And at 5, I had Tyleik Williams.
Yep. Okay.
What ones, where did you have on your 7 through 5?
So 7, obviously, Darius Alexander. So we spoke about him. 6, I have Derek Harmon. And 5, I had Tyleik Williams, which I have a feeling.
Okay, I was going to say, we've got the same 5, same number 5 there. We both have Tyleik at 5.
I actually think I've got him at 6, and I just didn't change it. So I've got him at 6 and Derek Harmon at 5.
Okay. So how about you hit us off with, give us your Tyleik thoughts.
Okay, so Tyleik Williams, 6'3", 327 pounds out of Ohio State. Obviously a massive frame, which is going to be key in the NFL. Like, he's big and he's built stout as well. So he's not going to be able to be manhandled by NFL offensive linemen. So obviously he's hard to move off his spot. I thought he disengaged from the block as well, which he didn't get caught up trying to make his moves and get to the ball, which again is key for them. And then at his size, he's got good strength, so he can get the blockers moving backwards, backpedaling. So his strengths for me are quite solid. But I look at his weaknesses and he's not a pass rusher. And I know at the size, it's going to be certain players at that size can be really good pass rushers. And then others you just know aren't going to develop that as much as they need to. I'm not sure where I stand on him being able to develop that side of his game yet. But I know he's really good in the run game. So he's going to be able to get on the field and make plays. But he just needs to develop that pass rush because to me, he didn't have many moves at all. And he kind of just got stuck trying to rush the passer. So, yeah, there's a few issues there with him that needs to improve. The leverage needs to improve as well a lot. So I think he's going to be a good player at the next level. I just don't think he's going to get up into that sort of top tier level at the moment for mine.
Yeah, so I had very similar sort of notes here. I had good movement, impressive strength, had very little issue shedding or getting off his blocks. I saw like he every once in a while flashed a really good pass rush move, but it was not consistent, and that's one of my major negatives that I had. That he was very inconsistent a lot. Like he has that talent. When you see him out there, you see some of these plays, and you're like, okay, you're the best player out on the field. And then other times you sit there and you watch him, and you're like, wait, how long have you actually been out there for? Like, I've barely noticed you there. Did you find that watching it that sometimes you was like he was there all the time, and then other times you're like, wait, where is he? I've lost him. Oh, I don't know whether he is. He's been there the entire time. Yeah. So, and you know, like you said, you said about his pad level. Like I saw that too in his negatives. He sort of hopped out of his stance a little bit, but when you take the best of him, you can see why we've got him in that 5-6 sort of range. Like some of his best plays, you just look at him and you do honestly think, okay, you are the best player out on this field. It's just the fact that the inconsistencies are there, which then lead you to go, come on, like we want you to be doing this more often. Instead of that 1 out of every 8 plays, we would like it, every 4 plays or whatever. Just that it's just that inconsistency of like, okay, we wanted a little bit more than what we're seeing at the moment.
And I found that a lot with a lot of these guys as well. Like we've spoke of it a few times already, that they just aren't consistent enough. Like they're flashing the ability, but it's just not often enough. So I've got Tyleek here. He's going to become a key rotational piece along the line, but I don't think he's going to be that sort of 3-down lineman, which you need players to be if you're looking at taking them high. I think he's going to be off the field a lot of the time on sort of 3rd and long and that type of thing. So he's not going to be a heavy sort of 3rd down defensive player.
Yeah. So you had Tyleek at 6. My number 6 was TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. Now, he's another guy I saw these two in similar sorts of ways that, solid get off, strong, pretty violent at the point of attack. Like he really had some power. He's shown some decent pass rushing moves as well. Like he's flashed them and he looks pretty good from what I've seen. And he had really good hand movement when he was, that I thought, like watching when he was rushing the passer, like he had really good hand movement in doing it. The negatives that I had about him is that he's another one of these guys. We've mentioned it so far for pretty much all of these guys. His pad level getting out of his stance isn't fantastic all the time. Like it's one of the major things, along with the 2 things I've noticed with these guys are the inconsistencies, as we've mentioned, and the pad level on a lot of these guys. Some of them are quite high, which makes it easier then for the offensive lineman to get up underneath and move them off that spot. So saw that. TJ Sanders, I thought too, I'll get your opinion in a second. His lateral movement wasn't outstanding compared to some of these other guys. Some of these other guys were really quick, able to move side to side. TJ Sanders seemed a little bit slower than these guys. And that can, so then the reason why that I found that to be the case, then that way, like if you're running some game on the defensive line or you're doing these stunts, he doesn't have that lateral movement to get out around and loop out and around the other defensive tackle to really get that, the reason why, and it's really hard comparing these guys to him, but like Jalen Carter is a menace because he can run straight through you. But then he works so well with Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, these guys, because they do have that lateral quick movement that they can get out and around and wreak havoc on that offensive line, where the way that you'll have Jordan Davis, crash down on the line and take the center and guard with him and leaves that gaping hole. Jordan Davis is able to get out and around. These TJ Sanders to me didn't really have that ability. So he doesn't seem like he's another guy to me, like you were sort of saying, he's got some pass rush move, but if you're going to be trying to go to a defense that runs a lot of stunts and a lot of games and all that sort of stuff on the defensive line, he might not be the guy that you want to in that particular role.
Yeah, so I'll tie into that. Oh, first off, because I didn't have TJ Sanders in that group that I mentioned, I've got him at number 4.
Okay.
So I really like him. He's my number 4 guy. But just tying into what you said, he just needs to get more pass rush moves. He gets bogged down a lot when that initial move doesn't work. And like you say, he doesn't get that lateral movement. So he does get bogged down a lot fighting that initial block. So that's something he really needs to improve on. Again, we spoke of him earlier. He's that sort of tweener kind of guy with his size, 6'4", 290 pounds. How much is he going to be able to live on the inside at that size against those bigger guards in the center there as well? So I don't know if you'll want him to put on too much more pounds there. Like, I think he's well built for his frame. He's got a good frame, well built, and he does have that good strength for his size. But it's just in the middle of the line, how much can he fight against where they've got those big guards and that sort of thing? So that could be a sort of downside for him to hold him back a bit. But he does use his hands well, fighting off the blocks. He's got a good motor. He's always looking to make the play, and he's always around it. So I think there's a lot of upside with TJ Sanders. I don't think it's nowhere near the finished product at the moment, where he's going to get projected at a certain point, and he's going to go at a certain point, and he could go higher than a lot of people might think because of the tools that he's got and that ceiling that I think he's got the ability to reach. So I think the combine is going to be massive for him as well. Like, it could be more beneficial for him than a lot of players in this defensive tackle class as far as how high he can go if he can push to that first round pick. So I like him. I think he's borderline sort of first round, second round pick.
Yeah, I've got him as a second rounder. That's sort of where I see him. But as you're talking about, like with those bigger, interior linemen, I know not every team has this, but if he ends up at, say, anyone in the NFC East that's not Philadelphia, if they keep that offensive line and he's got to go in the middle against Cam Jurgens, Mekhi Becton, and Landon Dickerson, like, I don't see him doing very well. Like, no one does really well against those guys.
No, not many people do. So
no, but they're like, if he ends up on the Cowboys or the Commanders, even the Giants, like, I don't expect him on the Giants, but like if he ended up in one of those situations, I don't see him having a lot of success against those because they are a team that do have a bigger interior offensive line, and they're not small on the tackle position either with Joe Mailata and Lane Johnson, but we are seeing a lot more of those teams, like even Carolina, looking at their interior offensive line. I'm not sure who's going to be center at the moment because I think Austin Corbett has a void year on his contract, and I think he might be gone from Carolina this year. But at that stage, the way they finished the season off, they had Cade Mays, who was playing center, or Brady Christensen. And then they have Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis, like really big-bodied interior linemen who more and more teams are heading that way now. They're looking for those bigger guys in the middle for these big teams because you are having to come up against Philadelphia and Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. And, you start looking around at some of the other defensive linemen going around and you sort of go, there's big dudes everywhere. Like, we need the big guys to block them out. So if he's not able to beat those bigger interior offensive linemen, like you said, I still think he will be really good, but it's just things that he would need to work on to really stand out to where a lot of people might see him projected.
Yeah, I think he's got the ability to play along the line a lot more than a lot of these other guys in this class. So he needs to get on a team where they're going to move him around and sort of look for those mismatches for him along the line. And he has the ability to play up and down the line, sort of anywhere kind of thing. So Yeah, I'm a big fan of him, to be honest. I wouldn't be upset if the Packers picked him at pick 23, even if it's a bit high. I just think he's that good of a player where he can make an impact on a defensive line there.
Yeah, so I had Derek Harmon at 4. You've got him at 5. So give me your Derek Harmon out of Oregon, his thoughts, and then we can do our 4 through 2 after that. So
Yeah. Another guy I absolutely love, 6'5", 310 pounds out of Oregon. And we're going to speak a lot about the Oregon defensive line players. There's a few in the edge class, a couple in the edge class, and then we've mentioned Jajari Caldwell earlier in the show. There's someone we need to watch more of. But yeah, 6'5", 310, perfect size for a defensive tackle in the NFL. He's got good suddenness and power off the ball and at the point of attack as well. And then he's a natural pass rusher. He can win in a variety of ways. So he's got that pass rush move set that you need when you get to the NFL. So I think he's sort of one of those guys that you can just plug and play straight away, and he's going to be a 3-down lineman from the start, which is massive. So, yeah, for me, he's someone that could be even higher as the process goes along. But I think he just needs to be, again, and same as a lot of these guys, just more consistent, snap to snap, which it's kind of hard in college. Like, a lot of these guys are so talented, they just rely on that natural skill. Where you get to the next level and everyone's like really, obviously, super good. So you need to be good every single play to make an impact. So that's what a lot of these guys just have to get better at. But he needs to finish off tackles a bit more as well. You can see him get around the ball, but then he just misses some tackles. So just finishing the plays is something he needs to improve on as well. So, yeah, really big fan of him, though. I think he's going to make an instant impact in the NFL.
Yeah, you pretty much all of the positives you outline were exactly what I have. Like you said, pass rusher, good size, has some really good moves. I also just had that he's one of these guys. He's got really good pad level in everything I saw. So we mentioned some of the other guys. The reason why I had them lower, they had their pad level sometimes was too high. Derek Harmon, for me, I had him at 4 because he was one of these guys who had the pad level that, I think is better and really good. Like, he was consistently really good pad level. My negatives for him, you mentioned it. The main one that I saw besides what you mentioned was that just as a pass rusher, sometimes I noticed he dropped his hands a little bit. And you could see the times when he was getting stuffed on his pass rush moves, his hands were too low, and the offensive linemen had their hands like in his chest, pushing him back, and he didn't really have a counter move to get off of that. So it wasn't all the time, but it was just one of those things every once in a while when he would try one of his pass rush moves, he'd drop his hands and wouldn't get them up. Like, we see in the combine, one of the things that the defensive linemen do is where they do that rip move past the tackle box, and you'll sit there and you're watching, you see that arm go up as they come around here and that up like that. And, that's to keep that, the whole point of that is to imagine that there's an offensive lineman who's got their hands out and you can just bam up with that and backing around. And there was some times where he just wasn't doing that. He would just sort of hands down, offensive lineman gets his hands in his chest and stonewalls him enough for whatever play that was needing to develop. So, but I'm in agreement with you. I really like him. I would be happy, obviously, if he was on Carolina, but he's just going to be one of these guys that I think, is going to be, as you said, plug and play from the get-go, really impactful sort of player, and sort of like how I'm, in my eyes, his type of rookie season he's going to have is very similar to Braden Fisk from the Rams, who you and I were talking about off air before. That type of impact straight away of like, he's just always there. He's causing mayhem. He might not always end up with the sack or the numbers, but he's one of the guys who does one of the major major parts there to really stuff that play. So yeah, he's number 4 for me. So
Yeah.
give me
For
your
me,
4 through 2.
we've gone with our 4. Both of us have spoken about our 4 now. So I had TJ Sanders 4. This is where it gets interesting because we know who's going to be number 1. My favourite in this class could be number 2, to be honest. So at number 3, I have Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. 6'3", 342 pounds, absolute monster. And you watch him play, and it's crazy how quick he can move for someone that size. Like we spoke about Deone Walker at the start of the show, where he's same size, similar size, obviously taller. They're just not even close to being the same. Kenneth Grant is obviously, we've got him top 3 for a reason, but the way he moves at his size and the way he can just do everything at his size, you just don't see all that often. Which I love seeing those big guys just move the way they do like that. It's always fun to watch. So yeah, I went back and forth a lot on this with my number 3 and number 2. But Walter Nolen, like I said, could be probably my favourite in the entire defensive tackle class. To be honest, I just love the way he plays. I just had to put him at number 2 over Kenneth Grant. And we'll go more into detail with him once you talk about the order you have him. But yeah, he's my number 2, to be honest.
So I am the same as you. I have the exact same top 3. I have Kenneth Grant at 3, Walter Nolen at 2, and then we obviously know who number 1 is.
Yeah.
Walter Nolen, and our number 1 are the only 2 defensive linemen that I've got a first round grade for. I actually think Walter Nolen is a first round type of player. That's how
100%.
much I like him. Everything you said about Kenneth Grant, I'm in 100% agreement with. The reason why I think too, where I probably had him different to Walter Nolen is I feel like Walter Nolen is more of a pass rusher than Kenneth Grant. Kenneth Grant to me didn't really seem to give a lot in terms of the pass rush side of things. I thought he was a really good run defender. You know, he was really good at doing what you need to, but he didn't really have the pass rush moves to me. If you added his pass rush moves, him and his teammate who we have number 1, Mason Graham, that would have been clear 1-2 for me. That's how I'm the same with you. That's how much I really like Kenneth Grant. The separating factor between them is that Walter Nolen to me had the pass rush skill set that Kenneth Grant didn't. So I've got Kenneth Grant as a second round grade, who could still go first round. I'm still expecting him to go in the first round, but I think that pass rush grade, that pass rush ability of Walter Nolen is what tipped him and put him in front for me.
Yep. Yeah, Walter Nolen's more of that all-around kind of guy at this point in time. So I'll go through what I had for Kenneth Grant with the strengths and weaknesses. So obviously we touched on it. Massive frame, impressive quickness for someone that size. He drew the double team, and this is what I guess can be argued about Mason Graham a little bit. Kenneth Grant drew that many double teams from the opposing offensive line that it freed up everyone else around him. And that's just sort of the dominant sort of force that Kenneth Grant is in the middle as well, at that size and that initial quickness. So that's a strength of his because he can still draw those double teams and make the plays consistently, especially in the run game. And then, yeah, he just makes life easier for those around him. But then it comes to the weaknesses. He's got the size. He's got this initial speed. It just didn't seem like he played with the sort of strength that you'd expect from someone that size. he didn't make enough of an impact. Even when he's getting double teams, you'd think at that size, he'd still be able to break it often enough to be able to sort of force a pass rush. And I just didn't find he did that enough. So, yeah, he won't consistently give you the pass rush, which is what he needs to develop at the next level. And then kind of the only weaknesses, I guess, in his game, which is a good thing for him and a good thing for the team that are drafting him. So if he can develop that pass rush with his quickness, he's going to wind up being one of the best players in this draft. He's just got to get there, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, to me, we've covered it all. It appeared like his arms were a little shorter, which then left him susceptible. Maybe that's why the combine is going to be interesting, because I want to see what his measurements and stuff are, like of his arm length and things. It just appeared like his arms were a little bit shorter, and that's why sometimes he was able to get stuffed on his pass rush moves, because he just didn't have that arm extension to be able to push the offensive lineman back out the way that little bit. So, I mean, that's where they're very minor things that we said, but the only reason I have him 3 is because of that lack of pass rush, as opposed to Walter Nolen.
Yeah.
So Walter
and
Nolen,
I couldn't argue. I wouldn't argue with anyone who has him higher as well.
No, exactly. And a lot of this too is, Dan and I, we obviously aren't NFL scouts. This is just how we see them. So if you are watching this and you're listening and you have Kenneth Grant number 2 by a mile and Walter Nolen not, that's fine. Like we want to hear your reasonings for this, but this is just the way that we see them ourselves. So Walter Nolen out of Ole Miss, look, really good size, impressively strong, physical at the point of attack. He took on blocks with a wide base that sort of was able to help anchor him down to get that drive through and really rip past some of these guys or bull rush them, whatever. He's the guy who's got the agility and lateral movement. That he's that guy where we were saying before we didn't see TJ Sanders with that. Walter Nolen has that for me from what I saw. I said that I've got here that he, on some of the film that I saw, he was really setting up his pass rush moves well by, he would set them up. Like he might see something where he could see his opponent was weaker on the inside. So he'd set it up by going outside, then bam, when he picked the spot, he'd rip inside and completely just he would set them up big time. And you could just see him really think about, he looks like he's got a really good high IQ from what I saw, the way that he was able to set his blocks up, his pass rush moves up. And to me, that's one of those things where you just watch a guy and you're like, okay, you really think about this stuff. Like you go into these games with a plan and you know where you want to attack and how you want to do it, and you set it up in time. So I was really liking his game. He was really good on some of those looper sort of things. We were talking about the agility and the lateral movement, being able to get out and around when they were doing the stunts, everything. I would just say with the negatives, and they're not really even massive. It's just like sometimes with his pass rush moves or run defender, sometimes his hands are a little bit late on things, which it's not a major thing, but it's like, sometimes the difference by getting your hand up that split second higher is the difference between a sack and a pressure. And it's not like it's a bad thing. It's like, okay, you're still pressuring the quarterback, but if you can turn 4 more of those pressures into sacks, that's huge for a defensive lineman. So that to me, I didn't have much in the way of negatives on him. Like, what did you like and see about Walter Nolen that put him at 2 for you?
So for me, for his weaknesses, I've got written down here, there's not really any that I've come across yet. Like, to be completely honest, his weaknesses are sort of so minor that it's easy for him to overcome. I think he gets a little bit high in his stance sometimes, but nothing major. He
Yeah.
just, yeah. If it wasn't for Mason Graham in this draft, I think he'd be clear-cut number one guy for me personally, without a question.
Mm.
I think for his strengths, I've got explodes out of his stance and has great quickness overall. He's another, he can play anywhere along the line. You can move him up and down the line and he'll make an impact no matter where his stance is, which is massive for someone like him. He can just make that play from wherever. He's got a good motor. He finishes plays consistently. So we've spoken a lot about the guys previously that they need to work on their consistency. Walter Nolen is consistent play to play, snap to snap,
Yeah.
which again is just something with his pass rush moves and his quickness and that get off to have that consistency every play. He's going to just make a lot of plays in the NFL, which is huge. For me, and from a Packers point of view, I know we need edge rush help. We need cornerback help. For me, at pick 23, I think it's being underestimated just how much having that impact interior defensive lineman will free up everybody else around them. And I know we got Kenny Clark there who's getting on a bit. Didn't have his best season this year. They'll have to make a decision with him after this upcoming year. We got Devontae Wyatt who was injured, but he showed really good flashes when he was healthy. I think he's ready to take that next step if he stays healthy. For me, and I don't even think Walter Nolen's going to last to pick 23. I think he's going top 20. But if he's sitting there when the Packers are on the board, I am running up that draft card and going, we want Walter Nolen. Because somebody like him, yeah, he can affect the inside of the defensive line. He can make plays there. But we saw it in the Super Bowl. You get that rush up the middle, it frees up the outside guys as well. Without them having to do
100%.
anything extra, it frees up the outside guys so much more because so much more focus has to be in the middle then. So someone like Walter Nolen is going to wind up being a steal in this draft. I can see him going in that 15 to 20 range, which is going to be heartbreaking for me because I want to see him get to the Packers at 23. Because I actually think they'll look at taking someone like him along that line there. So, yeah, I think he could have the biggest upside out of all the defensive linemen in this class.
Yeah. I sort of am expecting, I would be shocked if he makes it to pick 23 just because of how highly I rate him as a player. But yeah, if he's there, he would do wonders for whoever, if the Packers do get him at 23. So,
and it's that,
he's
it's
our
that
number
thing
2.
as well where, it's that thing as well where a lot of drafts, you're seeing guys like this that we're saying is a top 20 pick, locked in. Other drafts last year, we would have had this. He might not have been gone until pick 25 to 30, just because there was 6 quarterbacks picked in the first round. This year coming, if we get a third quarterback in the first round, we're going to be shocked. So I think that pushes guys like Walter Nolen up the board to where we see they're going to get drafted, but other years they might drop a few spots. This year, he could even go that top 15 just because that lack of quarterback that we think is going to happen this draft in the first round.
Well, I also think too, the NFL is such a copycat league that this year we're probably going to see more edge rushers and defensive linemen go in the top 40 picks than we've probably seen for a long, long time. This edge class is super deep. This defensive line class is super deep. It's one of those things where everyone's just watched the Philadelphia Eagles win the Super Bowl without blitzing Patrick Mahomes once. That not a single drop back in this Super Bowl did the Philadelphia Eagles blitz. They just ran 4 guys at him and were able to get Mahomes sacked 6 times in the Super Bowl, which is just insane. So
Absolute cheat
I
code.
think if you're able to generate that much of a pass rush with your front four, then you are in such like elite tier of defense where you don't have to blitz. If you're then able to drop 7 guys into coverage, it doesn't matter who you're playing. If you're constantly getting to that quarterback with only rushing 4, like that's why we are going to see some of these guys pushed up higher and higher. And last year, we had the 6 quarterbacks go in the first round. I would have given anything before the draft. I would have said there is no way that Cooper DeJean would have gone past pick 25 last year, and he made it to pick 39 or 49 or something ridiculous. And we saw what type of impact Cooper DeJean had. So, like you said, I know we're saying he's a lock top 20 pick, but I think he is actually this year because there isn't that quarterback rush like what you were saying. So that leads us to our number 1 that we both have, which I think everyone is going to, a vast majority of people are going to have this year. It is Mason Graham out of Michigan. Dan, give us your positives and negatives here about Mason Graham.
Yeah, 6'3", 318 pounds. He's the ideal build for a defensive lineman, defensive tackle. He's probably he does have the best technique in this draft, but he's going to be one of the sort of defensive linemen that have the best technique in the league when he comes in. Like, he's that good. He's got really good quickness as well at that size. So he gets off his blocks, has an ability to make plays everywhere. And then his power to beat the blockers. He's going to be able to be that guy that he has that quickness, but he's also got that power where he combines those two together, and he's going to be super hard to block no matter who he's up against. So he's going to come in, he's going to disrupt the pass game straight away. He's going to make plays in the run game. You're never going to get him off the field, basically. He's just going to impact the game in so many ways. So that is why he's being talked up as a locked-in top 10 pick.
Yeah.
So the weaknesses doesn't have many, but I don't know. I forgot to look, but his arm length's going to be interesting. I think it's on the smaller side compared to some of the other players, but again, it's not something that affects him, but it's just that ability to disengage blockers where you get to the next level, and it's going to be harder for him. But again, I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue for him. And then I've got here, we spoke about it with Kenneth Grant, how much of his production was because of just having that monster next to him taking up those double teams as well. And it's not to downplay Mason Graham, obviously, because one-on-one in a vacuum, he is the most talented player in this defensive line class. But he also had that guy next to him that just made his life so much easier. So it's going to be interesting when he gets to the next level, where it's more than likely Mason Graham's going to be that number 1 defensive tackle on his team. So how's he going to go being the sole focus kind of thing? So again, like I said, it's not going to be something that's going to knock him down. It's not going to be something that's going to affect him too much. He's one of the best prospects we've had in the draft for a long time. I just think he's a can't miss sort of prospect. So whoever gets him in the top 10 is going to be laughing.
So my negatives that I had for him, you mentioned one of them, shorter arm length, and the other one I said is sometimes he might just need to work on his hand placement for his pass rush move. That's it. Like, there's not much there. It's just little tweaks. There is a team in the top 10 who might be looking at him, who I'm really intrigued to see, and that would be the Carolina Panthers. Now, everyone for Carolina is crying out for edge rusher, which I understand, but you pair him with Derek Brown in the middle, there is your team that has a number 1 defensive tackle already in Derek Brown. He missed all of this year with an injury. So Derek Brown will be eager to get back, but he is that guy. Derek Brown, the season before, put it this way, the season before, Derek Brown set the record for defensive tackles for number of tackles. He had over 100 tackles for the season as a defensive tackle in 2022-23. So, or 23-24. So he's a guy who Carolina had one of the worst defenses ever last season. And everyone wants edge rusher, which I do as well. But having him as a potential defensive tackle to pair Mason Graham to pair with Derek Brown, that would be enough to have them have that Kenneth Grant type of guy next to him who Mason Graham could excel then by having Derek Brown next to him. And then if you're Carolina, you can address edge rusher in either free agency or in the second, third rounds of the draft. But Carolina might actually be one of there's a couple teams in that top 8 that might be looking at him. New York Jets might be looking at him at 7. Las Vegas, I would expect Las Vegas to look at quarterback, but if they don't, that would imagine that defensive line with Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, and Mason Graham as their defensive line. It's a pretty scary sort of thought, but there are a few teams there that could be looking at him, and I would be pretty surprised if he dropped past 8. But then again, if he did drop past 8, it would just be because Carolina or someone goes for edge rusher, in which case I think he would then probably go number 9 to the New Orleans Saints, and I'll have to see him all the time anyway, but not in the capacity that I was hoping to see Mason Graham. So, that was our number 1. So, Dan, have you got anything that you need to add or want to add about Mason Graham before we do our recaps?
So just piggybacking off what you said there with Carolina taking him at pick 8. If he lasts to pick 8, you're absolutely laughing. And you said about the fan base clamoring for edge rusher there, which depending who falls and who's available there, then yeah, absolutely. But you guys have pick 40, is it, in the second round?
It's 50 something. Hang on a sec. It is. Just give me a second while I look that up. It is. Bear with me while this loads because I don't have the numbers memorized when I should have. So we have the Rams second round pick. So we lost our second round pick, which would have been pick 39 to the Bears as part of the Bryce Young trade. But they have, let me see, 58. So 58 is the pick for Carolina there. So pick 58 there is what we're looking at for that. So yeah, Carolina pick 58 is the next one that we had. So who do you reckon would be? Yeah. So they lost pick 39 in the Bryce Young trade, but then when the Rams traded up in this year's draft, in the last draft to get Fisk in the second round, they gave up a future second round pick, which is this one here. So Carolina has pick 58.
Okay. So that makes it a little bit more tricky for you guys to get that edge rusher in the second. But again, we're going to speak about it when we talk about the edge rush class, when we do our episode on that. It's going to be like 15, 20 guys deep kind of thing. So you're going to still be able to get a really quality player in the second round if you want to look at your edge rusher there. Where if Mason Graham's available at pick 8, that's a slam dunk pick and it affects the entire defense straight away. Even if you don't go edge rusher in the second or third. So, yeah, like we spoke about with Walter Nolen and Kenneth Grant, they can affect the entire defense from the inside. So it's going to be, whoever gets Mason Graham. Yeah, so basically anyone in that sort of, I guess seeing him go top 5 would be tough, just with how we're expecting the first 4 picks to go. Well, not expecting them to go, but how they could go. But anyone in that sort of 5 to 8 range who's going to get Mason Graham is going to be laughing, because I don't see him falling outside the top 10 at all.
No.
Kind of hard to see him falling outside the top 7. He's that sort of talent. It's just depending what teams are looking for. But yeah, for mine, again, he shouldn't make it past you guys at 8. He may not even get there though. But whoever gets him is just getting an absolute stud along that line for the next 10 years.
I have a feeling the Jets are going to take him at 7 and pair him with Quinn and Williams. I've just got this thought that's going to happen, and Carolina's going to be. And I just have this feeling Carolina's going to be absolutely devastated that he went the 1 pick beforehand. So, So what we'll do is let's recap our top 10. So, Dan, can you do your 10 through 1 there?
Okay, so at 10, Deone Walker. 9 is Omar Norman Lott. 8 is Alfred Collins. 7 is Darius Alexander. 6 is Tyleik Williams. 5 is Derek Harmon. 4 was TJ Sanders. 3 is Kenneth Grant. And then we have Walter Nolen at 2, and the consensus number 1 defensive tackle in Mason Graham at number 1.
So I had Deone Walker at 10, Darius Alexander at 9, Alfred Collins at 8, Omar Norman Lott at 7, TJ Sanders 6, Tyleik Williams 5, Derek Harmon 4, Kenneth Grant 3, Walter Nolen 2, and Mason Graham number 1. So that's the show for this one tonight. That's our top 10. Like we said, we've got a few guys who potentially could find their way higher or lower on this, depending on what happens come pro days and combines and ability to watch more film on these guys. So any last words, Dan, that you have on this before we head out of here and head to our next show? Do you want to let everyone know what our next show is going to be?
Our next show is... It may have to be our next 2 shows, because it's going to be an absolute monster. And we are both going to lose our voice by the end of it, I think. Mm-hmm. But our next show will be the Edge class. And when I say that we're potentially going to go 20 deep, I'm not even joking. I don't know how we're going to keep it sort of... We were talking off air during the week that I think we're going to be doing a top 15 show for Edge.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're going to keep it to top 15, to be honest. There's just so many guys in this class.
I was thinking about that. I was thinking about too, if we just look at just straight edge rushers, we're probably looking top 20. But then throw in guys like a Jalen Walker, who could be an edge rusher, and a few of these other types of guys. This is going to be tough. So we're not exactly sure what top number it is just yet. We're going to say minimum of 15, but it could be 20. So we'll wait and see.
And I think it may be a case where we're not recording that episode maybe for 2 weeks yet, just because we got such a volume of guys we have to look at. So we may have to sort of look at doing... Actually, I haven't spoken to you about this yet, but I may as well do it now. We may split this up, do our defensive tackle show obviously now, leave the edge class for 2 weeks so we can really dive into it. I think we can look at, in the meantime, which will play into this draft class a lot as well, we might have to do a sort of free agent look-ahead show, because free agency is coming up soon as well. So I think we might end up recording a free agency show next week, and that gives us 2 weeks where we just focus solely on sort of the edge class and getting through as many guys as we can, because, like I said, it's going to be an absolute monster task for us too.
Yeah, and to me, this is the show coming up, the Edge Rusher show, where this is going to have the biggest variance. I think the only thing that we can probably guarantee is we'll probably both have the same number one. I have a very strong feeling we will both have
Yeah.
the same number one edge rusher. Other than that,
Yeah.
the rest of the top 15, 20, however many we do, could be so different that it could cause arguments. Who knows?
Could be absolute
Who knows?
carnage. And yeah, it's going to be all over the place, I think, which is what makes it fun. Because some of the
Yeah,
reactions
so
we're going to have, there's going to be a lot of, ooh.
yeah. So if you are someone who likes doing this sort of thing as well, there you go. We're giving you 2 weeks to look at your edge rushes and come armed with your takes, your rankings. Who do you think we have too high, too low? What your thought process is? Because yeah, you're right. We were thinking originally like, yeah, we'll do it next week. But the more and more I've started looking at guys and just blindly trying to rank them just based off of what I've seen so far, I'm already just completely lost. Because like I said, I've got number one locked in, but the rest of them have changed in a heap of time just from what I've been able to look at so far. So I would say, yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably a wise move to give us 2 weeks to look at these guys because it's just going
I
to
was,
change
I
so
was,
many times.
yeah, I was thinking about it today. I'm like, just for myself personally, with what I've got coming up with work and everything else, I was saying, how the hell are we going to watch enough tape and get through enough? And we've watched some guys already. So
Yeah.
it's not like we're going into this next week, we're not having watched any of them. We've already got a few
Mm.
that we've got a base of.
Yeah.
And I still sat there going, how the hell am I going to have the time to get through the amount
Yeah.
that I want to get through to do this properly? And I'm like, there's no
Yeah.
way we can do this in a week. So, and
No.
I have a feeling it might be a case where we get to the linebackers and the safeties. And I think those shows are going to be more condensed. The
Yeah.
cornerbacks will be spread out a little bit. But for us, especially, just starting to get our feet wet in this sort of scouting type thing, the defensive side of the ball is going to be a struggle for us to focus on enough time to be able to feel real comfortable and be convicted in what we think of our opinions.
Yeah.
So we don't want to sit here and just go, yeah, no, let's rush this out and just put it out there so it's there. We want to do this right for not only ourselves, but
Mm.
anyone who listens to this as well. So, yeah, we're not going to rush this and just force it out there.
Yeah, I think there are going to be some shows where we're going to be a lot more condensed on. Like I wouldn't be surprised. Like offensive linemen too, for me, could be another one we're pretty condensed on. Quarterbacks, I don't see a great like. I don't think we're going to have I don't even think with quarterbacks we'll probably have a top 10. We might only do a top 5 or something for that because top 6
Yes.
somewhere along that. Just because there are guys in this that it's not last year where, like we said, we had the 6 quarterbacks going round one. So there are going to be some shows where are a little bit more condensed, some that are going to be a little bit longer. So yeah, we'll have a bit of a schedule if we can. We'll try and let you guys know in advance, like when we're recording these shows, what our next one is, so that if you would like to join in with us and engage with us, our top 10s, 20s, 8s, 4s, whatever we end up doing for the different things, we'll try and let you know. So, and potentially too, there could be a show where we run through 2 position groups because we know they're going to be 2 smaller sort of numbers. So we might do a quarterback and a tight end sort of group as one show, or offensive tackle, offensive guard, center. That just could be a singular type of show. So we'll wait and see how that pans out, but we'll let you know as we go on. So any last words, Dan, that you have before we get out of here for this episode?
Yeah, I think this defensive tackle class is going to be a lot of teams happy with who they draft when they want to fill the need for defensive tackle. So I can't wait for the combine, obviously, for a lot of these guys. And then I can't wait to see where a lot of them land as well, because landing spot. Talk about landing spot for quarterbacks and running backs and that sort of thing being key. I think defensive tackle landing spot's going to be absolute key this year as well. So looking forward to it. Looking forward to watching even more of these guys as well for when we get closer to the draft. So we're looking at sort of 3rd round, 4th round guys as well. So yes, happy we got to do this now. I've been looking forward to this one.
Yeah. So my favourite one, I can already tell you all, and we've already pretty much mentioned it, but the edge rusher class is going to be probably my favourite one that we do. That's the one I've been looking forward to the most because this class is really deep with edge rushers. It is like this defensive line class, but supersized pretty much with how many good edge rushers are coming in through here. So that type of run we had last year on quarterbacks and offensive type players, we could see something ridiculous like that with defensive guys this year, which will be an absolute barrel of fun for my thinking. So that'll do us for this episode. So thank you for tuning in. If you've come all this way, please leave your comments below. Let us see what you think of these guys, who you're higher on than we are, who you're lower on. We'd love to have your input. We will have some graphics coming out at some stage with our rankings on there as well, so you can keep an eye out for all of them. You can find Dan on Twitter at beard_82. You can find me at BradBolt1. You can find us on Blue Sky for pretty much the exact same handles. That's probably where you'll find us. Well, you find me more. I'm more over there than Twitter these days. Optimus Fantasy. Go there. We're going to try and get some more of these shows, some little shorts out with some of our guys as well, so we can go over this for you and you can have some easily digestible sort of videos that you're able to look at some of these guys coming up. So, Dan, thank you for a fun show. Now we got to head back to the drawing board and sit down and not move from our computers for the next 2 weeks while we watch edge rushers.
Yeah, sorry, work. I can't come in today. I've got more important things to do.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm sure my work will be completely fine with it as well. There's not going to be any issues whatsoever. So,
Yeah, no.
So on behalf of Dan and myself and all of us here at the Optimus NFL show, thank you for tuning in for another episode and thank you for watching your ultimate home of NFL football transforming the way you watch the game. Bye for now.